Hello, my name is Abigail or Abby, and I talk about book things, things I'm passionate about, and right now it's my stats for June and July. I will be looking down at my stats and the books that I read for June and July. So if you see me looking down, I'm looking at my iPad. My cat is behind me, being a cute baby. My books are all packed up presently. Well, not all. I shouldn't say all. I'm definitely looking at a disgusting amount that's not packed, but for the most part, my books are packed because I am relocating. So for the duration of this video, you'll have to pretend that I'm holding it as I insert a photo right there. So I'm going to separate this month of June versus July because that's what's easiest for me and my brain. Here are my stats for the month of June according to Storygraph. I will skip over the moods and the pace because I don't really care that much. Everything I read this month was fiction. I read a total of 14. Is that right? Did I really read 14 romances? I guess I read 14 romances, 11 of which were logged as short stories and contemporary. Apparently, I read 5 young adult books. That doesn't clock. Maybe it does. I'll have to look into it. I read 2 sports books, one that was logged as dystopian, one that was logged as LGBTQIA, one that was logged as literary, and one that was logged as fantasy. So Storygraph does this really cool thing where if I click on a stat, I can see what books that I read that were considered young adult, and yeah, that checks out. And then for the format, I don't know that this is accurate because occasionally I just log something. If I read it tandem, I will log it as physical because I don't know how to log it as both. So it looks like I've read most of these books as digital, which that does make sense because a decent portion of these were short stories that I got on Kindle Unlimited. So for the stats that actually matter, I rated 11 books 3 stars and 9 books 4 stars. The page number I don't really think matters that much, so we will go ahead and talk about the books that I read. Now, if I have already discussed these in another video, like for a vlog or something, rather than talk about my thoughts again, I will just tell you which book or which vlog you can find those books in. Starting with these 2 books that I read at the very tail end of May and into June, that is Reckless and Hopeless by Elsie Silver. I read that for my reading Elsie Silver. I read everything that Elsie Silver had written until this most recent series, and both of those were given 4 stars. However, actually everything from here, yeah, all of Elsie Silver's were given either 3 or 4 stars. Not that that has anything to do with this, but the more I think about Reckless, which is the 4th book in the Chestnut Springs series, the more I think it's a 5 star. So I might change that. We'll see. And then moving on to the Kindle Unlimited ones, I got a whole bunch of them and I read them all across 2 days. I don't know why, but I did. And I didn't talk about them anywhere because they were like, most of them were like less than 60 pages, and I didn't feel like they needed to be talked about. The only one that I really loved was Worst Wingman Ever. I did give that one a 4 stars. That's by Abby Jimenez, which, by the way, was my first dip into Abby Jimenez as an author. So I'm definitely excited to see what else Abby Jimenez has to offer, especially in long form content, because that short story was a 4 star for me, and it's very difficult to get a 4 star. The Exception to the Rule was another 4 star. That was by Christina Lauren. I don't remember what any of these are about. This was from the Improbable Meet Cute that Amazon put on. So I have The Exception to the Rule by Christina Lauren, which was a 4 star. Rosie and the Dreamboat by Sally Thorne was a 3 star. Worst Wingman Ever by Abby Jimenez, another 4 star. With Any Look, Ashley Poston, that was a 3 star. Drop Cover and Hold On by Jasmine Guillory, that was a 3 star. The next short story that I read, but this time listened to, it was in the Read Me Romance podcast. If you've not heard of that podcast, they basically put on short novellas and they have an audiobook for them. So I listened to 1 or 2 episodes, and that got me the entirety of Cupid Gets Struck by Alexa Riley. I did give that a 3 star. And then the next 5 books that I read were also part of the Amazon short story collection. This time it was like fantasy. So I read The Prince and the Troll by Rainbow Rowell, gave it 3 stars. Hazel and Grey by Nick Stone, also gave it 3 stars. The Princess Game by Simon Cianani, also 3 stars. The Cleaners by Ken Liu, 3 stars. And The Wickeds by Gail Forman, also 3 stars. So moving into some actual books that I cared about and just pick up because they were on Amazon Kindle Unlimited. Taylor Jenkins Reid, Atmosphere. This was a 4-star. I have an entire dedicated blog to this, so if you're interested in seeing my thoughts as a self-proclaimed TJR stan, auto-buy author for me, you can check that out. This was a 4-star. It was not my favorite Taylor Jenkins Reid book, but it was definitely a Taylor Jenkins Reid book, and it says something, because there are a lot of books in the world, and when Taylor Jenkins Reid writes it, I'm going to read it. The next book that I read was Silver Elite. I did another dedicated blog for this one. I listened to this primarily as I was traveling to and from to work, but I did do a little bit of tandem reading where I followed along or I was just reading physically. I did another dedicated video. Don't ask me why I read this book as a primarily contemporary or like real life setting, whether it be thriller, horror, etc. Don't ask me why I read this book. I will not be taking questions at this time. However, I did read it and I gave it a 3-star. It's more like a 2.5, but we'll call it a 3-star because I don't typically use half-star rating. Next up, I read Caught Up by Navessa Allen. This is the second book in the Into Darkness series. I bought this 2 ways. I got the audio book and I also got the physical book. I finished this in a day. If you are interested to see my thoughts on that, I did another sort of dedicated blog for this one. And it is like reading my most anticipated or something like that. I'll link it down below. Next up, we have a reread for me. This is A Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. The reason that I reread this book is because A, it's my favorite book of all time, my very favorite book that's ever existed, and B, because I did a dedicated blog in which I read my favorite book before I got a book tattoo. A tattoo representing my favorite book of all time, tattooed permanently upon my flesh for all of eternity. So that was a 5-star, obviously. Next up, I read Leather and Lark and Scythe and Sparrow, the Ruinous Love Trilogy, and these are by Bryn Weaver. I did this for another blog alongside the next 2 books that I'll talk about. For a I wanted to finish series I was currently in the middle of vlog. Whatever I decided to call that, I don't know. So if you're interested in seeing my thoughts, you can go ahead and watch that video. But for both of those, I did rate them 4 stars. The next book that I read in the month of June was Daydream. Daydream is the 3rd book in the Maple Hills trilogy. Once again, I read this for the finishing book series that I'm currently in the middle of. This is a 4-star for me. I enjoyed it. Next up, and also a part of the finishing books that finishing series I'm currently in the middle of vlog, I finished the Twisted series, finishing up with Twisted Lies by Anna Huang. This was a 3-star book for me. I did not really care. I really only cared at the end. That was it. It felt like it was dragging for 7.5 hours until we got to the end. But if you're interested in hearing more thoughts, like I said, you can go ahead and click on that video. Next up, we have my July stats. So in the month of July, it appears that I read not all fiction once again. In the month of July, I picked up significantly more thriller or horror books, actually a lot more. I read 5 books that were considered thriller, 4 that were considered romance, and then I'm not really sure how this breaks down because it's giving me stats for each thing that it's logged as, but I did not read this many books. So anyways, long story short, I read some thriller, I read some romance, I read some mystery, some contemporary, some horror. Apparently I read 2 historical. Actually, yeah, I did. You're right. Mostly I read these physically with the exception of a handful of audiobooks. And this is the biggest month so far that has the spread, at least when it comes to stars given. I gave 1 2-star. I gave 6 3-star. I gave 4 4-star. and 1 5-star. The next 2 books I also read for a dedicated blog. This was called like I read 2 legal rom-coms that released the same day, something like that. I read How Romantic by Emily Harding. I found this book to be incredibly insufferable, apparently, because it's very rare when I actually voice those types of opinions on Goodreads, but apparently I wrote a review. So uh, I had thoughts. I gave this one a 2-star. The next book that I read for that blog was Overruled by Lana Ferguson. Both of these were centered around like a courtroom or like lawyers, and I thought it was really interesting that both of them released the same day, and they are both legal rom-coms. So I picked them up. I wanted to see, compare, contrast, and read them both and see what I thought. And I definitely had a preferred book, and that was Overruled by Lana Ferguson, which I did give a 4-star. This is where we get into Summerween, my favorite holiday. For Summerween, I read a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 books. 7 books for Summerween. So if you're interested in seeing my thoughts, I did a total of 4 dedicated Summerween vlogs. I'm not sure which books I read in which vlogs, but I did read the following 7 books for Summerween. So if you are interested in seeing my thoughts on those 7 books, you can go ahead and check out those videos. So starting off with Strange Houses, I gave this one a 3-star. This is by Yuketsu. And the next book that I read was The Blanks. This is part of one of those Amazon collections. This was a Shiver collection, and this is by Grady Hendrix. This was a 4-star for me. The graphic novel, the one and only graphic novel that I read for Summerween and the entire year so far, was Wait Till Helen Comes Home, and this is by Scott Peterson, and it is also by Mary Downing Hahn. This was a 3-star for me. It was fine. The Butcher by Jennifer Hill. This is another 3-star for me. Once again, it's fine. The Death of Mrs. Westaway was a book that I had had on my TBR for years and years and years. I finally picked up for Summerween. I did end up giving it a 4-star. The next book that I picked up was With a Vengeance. This book was featured actually in 2 blogs. One of them was the Reading My Most Anticipated Books of the Year blog that I also read Caught Up in. And I also read it for Summerween because I had DNF'd it. I had full-blown DNF'd this book for that Reading My Most Anticipated of the Year blog. I just wasn't feeling it. And I did happen to pick it back up for Summerween, so that's good. It was fine. I gave it 3 stars. The next book that I read, and the final book for Summerween, is by Marcus Kleiwer, and this is called We Used to Live Here. This was the 5-star. This, I don't know if he put crack in this book, but it was a 5 freaking star. I really, really loved it. And you can find that towards the end of my Summerween blog. The next 3 books that I will talk about were featured in my DC blog. So if you're interested in my thoughts on these 3 books, you can go ahead and check them out in that blog. I read The First Ladies by Mary Benedict, and there was another author as well, Victoria Christopher Murphy. I gave this book a 4-star. It was a really good time, and it was historical fiction, and it's very rare that I enjoy historical fiction, but I ate this up. The next book that I read was Murder in the White House, and this is by Margaret Truman, which is the daughter of President Harry Truman. This was a 2-star, or maybe it was a 3-star. It was probably a 3-star. It was a 3-star. It was fine. If you're interested in my thoughts, like I said, you can click on that blog. And then Meet You in the Middle by Devin Daniels. This was a 3-star. It's fine. It was fine. The next couple books that I'm going to talk about were featured in my vlog that was called Summer. The summary Summer That Ever Did Summer. I'm going to go ahead and feature them in this video, despite me having finished 2 of them in early August. Technically, one of them at like 1 a.m. Does it really count as August if it's occurring at 1 a.m.? I'm not sure, but I'm going to go ahead and put them in this video because it is more concise to include them all in the same wrap-up if they are all featured in the same vlog. So I read Summer in the City by Alex Astor. I gave it a 3-star. I read Problematic Summer Romance by Allie Hazelwood, another 3-star. And then technically this counts as a August 5-star, but we have the second 5-star of my entire year, aside from a reread, And that is Till Summer Do Us Part by Megan Quinn. That was it for my wrap up. Let me know in the comments down below. Did you read any of these? Have you considered reading any of them? What were your thoughts? Do you plan to read them? What are your stats for the month of June and July? Let me know all the things in the comments down below, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.